Hi, it's Dawn Johnson with the So True Network. And I'm so excited to be here with someone who is familiar to our network, Mrs. Patricia Gillum Sams. And we're coming to you with a special edition around women's health because there's a topic that has emerged that is near and dear to our hearts. And we feel like women need to be more aware about the topic of breast cancer. So, Pat, welcome.
Hello, Dawn.
And if you all remember, Pat is the was officially named the GOAT by the Legacy League, but she is the visionary behind the Legacy League as well as the Sister Covenant. And you will see our interview on the So True Network as well as links to all the other work that she's doing in our communities. But today, Pat, we're here to talk about, as I like to say, you had a thing.
I had a thing. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here to this beautiful city of Charlotte.
Yes, we're in Charlotte.
Yes, for Self-Care
The
Weekend.
self-care weekend. Yes,
So
let's
thank
not be
you.
remiss.
So let's not be remiss in saying congratulations to you
Yes,
on the 6th annual Self-Care Weekend.
absolutely.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. Because
Thank
that
you.
means that add 50 plus, because we started this for my 50th birthday as a
Yes,
brunch, and
yes,
it turned into a weekend
yes,
affair that we
yes,
have kept going.
yes, yes, and that's a blessing.
That is a blessing.
That is a blessing, and it's so appropriate as we're talking about aging gracefully
Mm-hmm.
and being kind to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and being advocates for ourselves.
Absolutely.
So for me, it was 2019, and my mother had passed away just 11 months or earlier from uterine cancer, which
Okay.
we found out. And as we found out about that cancer, it was already too late to do anything about it. So she passed away just several weeks after us becoming aware.
Wow.
But I'm doing my annual mammogram.
Mm-hmm.
It was scheduled. I schedule it promptly without fail. It's my birthday month. So
Okay.
I make sure I get all my tune-ups and checkups in the month of August. And I'm sitting in the waiting area and I'm reading all the things about if you have a family history of this kind of cancer and that kind of cancer and this kind of cancer, how you may want to be a little bit more tuned in on your breasts.
Yeah.
And so later that day, I get a call that says, Miss Sams, we need you to come back in. We see something. And that's where it started for me. So from that time on, I would get that call. I would have my regular mammogram screening.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2020 happened. What happened during 2020? It's a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So things in healthcare, like the world, were a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But I would get that call and it was come back in for a diagnostic mammography or an MRI or ultrasound. So in 2024, when I scheduled my annual
Mm-hmm.
mammography instead of a screening, because in 22 I had a biopsy
Okay.
because they saw something a little more this time. And it turned out to be just calcifications.
Okay.
So I was good, but they then put me on like a 6-month cadence.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's time to do my 1 year and do that screening again, that routine screening. And I said, no, I want to do a diagnostic. Let's start with that. And they
And
said,
why did you ask for that?
because that's what it had become. It
Okay.
had become almost routine in my mind that every time I did a routine screening, inevitably I was going to get a diagnostic.
Okay.
And then from a diagnostic, I could get other imaging done. So I thought, let's start with the diagnostic and then go from there. So I wouldn't get that call to say, come back.
Gotcha. So I just want to break things down really, really in layman's terms, because sometimes I think we say things and we assume that everyone understands.
Sure.
What is a biopsy?
So a biopsy is an actual surgical procedure where they have to take cells, if you will, or a layer of your cells
Mhm.
to send it off to a lab and to look at it closer under microscopic lens to see if there are any cancerous cells in
So
there.
they numb the area
hmm
and make
They,
an
they
incision,
make an incision.
take a cell. Do you have
They
to get a stitch?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, there was a little stitch and there's a little marker there to mark where it is. So if anything else ever surfaces, they'll know, oh, that was a place before.
Okay. And that is done around the place where they saw something.
Something,
Okay.
something. And in this case, let's step back, Dawn. Thank you for that. We women
Mhm.
sometimes have what is called dense breasts.
Mhm.
And not to be confused with large breasts,
Mhm.
which I've had all my life. I think since 7th grade, I've had these same breasts. But it's dense. That means the tissue is dense. There's a lot of fibrous
Mhm.
tissue in your breast. So with that on screen, there's white everywhere. But those potential cancerous cells could be growing in there, and it's a little harder to see.
Okay.
And imaging, depending on what type of imaging you have, will make it clearer. And someone who's trained can pick it up, but it has to be very carefully done. So, as your question asks, why did I ask for that diagnostic study to be done as opposed to the regular screening?
Mhm.
Well, for 4 years prior to last year, I was called back. So in my mind, let's skip a routine screening and go right to diagnostic because that
You
would
had
be
to
clearer.
ask for that though.
I had to ask for it, but even more so when I asked for it, what I was told is, but that's not your standard of care. And I said, well, it is now. And they said, but your insurance company may not pay for it. And I said, I don't care. I want that.
Right.
So, of course, I did that. And that same day, the doctor came in and held my hand and she said, okay, we see something.
Mhm.
So that same day, they did an ultrasound. So
Okay.
keep in mind, if I hadn't had that diagnostic study, I would have gotten that call again. And that's anxiety building in and
Right.
of itself because
Right.
it's almost like you know it's coming. You're just waiting. You're trying to go through your day normally, but
Mhm.
it's not a normal day because you inevitably know you're going to get a call. So that same day, because I started with the diagnostic, I got the ultrasound done right there. And that day they said, okay, we're going to schedule you for an MRI.
So, because I'm going to go back to the first time that I even heard about breast care, right? It was a matter of, when you start to get your pap smears, they tell you, okay, let's show you how to check your breasts. And so that becomes a routine where they show you, okay, this is what you're feeling for. You're feeling for a pee. And you're told every time your cycle comes, when you're in the shower, just lift up your arms and they show you how to check. So, is it right to assume that that is no longer kind of the standard? Like it should be, or is that what younger people should be doing until you turn 40 and then you start getting the mammograms?
I think you need to do it all. Dawn.
Okay.
And I must be honest, I cannot tell you I have been diligent about doing my own self breast exams.
Okay.
But I can tell you that you cannot just do your breast exams and think that's all you need to do.
Okay.
You have to couple it with your own due diligence and knowing your own body, knowing how your body feels, but also how you feel totally.
Right.
But you also have to advocate for yourself in our medical communities because we have testing, and the reason we have standards is because someone has died
Right.
from breast cancer. And that's how the procedures and the parameters are set. And I don't want to be that person.
Right. Right.
I don't want to be that person. So for me, I felt like I needed to ask the questions and push for the proper testing. So in 2024, when I did that, and it turned out that I went further with more testing and then additional testing, and then I was it was determined that I needed to have a second biopsy, not in the breast that they initially saw something in, but in this breast, which was the same breast that I had had the biopsy done 2 years earlier, if that makes sense, right? I remember thinking, are you guys just waiting for me to have breast cancer? Could we do something more? But as it turned out, this time it was actual breast cancer. But back to your question of examining your own breast, the blessing is it was so small. It was caught so early that even if I had done my own self-exam, I would not have caught it.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why I say we need to do both.
Right. And there's some other indicators because, first of all, getting a mammogram is not typically covered by insurance until you're 40.
Mm-hmm.
So women need to understand their history and their families, because if their family members, mothers, siblings, maybe aunties have had breast cancer, they will be covered.
That's right.
Typically to have mammograms earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. Unfortunately, and I'm not as knowledgeable as some, but I think back in the day, where did our parents live? We lived on farms. We grew our own food. Our environment was clean. We didn't have the stress or the pollutants that we have now. So younger women are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And something that is also scary, it's not always a family history. Right. So it's no playbook. I guess that's what I'm saying. Right. So awareness is key. My breast cancer, my mother didn't have breast cancer. Remember, it was uterine cancer. My sister, my aunt, my grandmother, no breast cancer.
Wow.
So where did that come from? And I say that to say it's maybe environmental, it may be the foods that are ingested, but we have to be not just familiar with our bodies, but familiar with our bodies. We can't put everything in there and expect that we're going to be well.
Right.
Yeah.
That part.
That
So, okay, you get the diagnosis. Now, there was a point, because you and I talked about this a lot, but you had to push for more diagnostic tests, and there were some delays and all the things. So kind of unpack that a little bit so people understand the advocacy part.
I think the advocacy part was certainly demanding, if you will, to get the test that I knew was already there.
Right.
And in my way, that was saying, let's make that my standard, because that's what it's become. And then let's go further, because I knew we were going to need to go further if they saw something. And I think also the advocacy came in when I decided I need a better level of care here, because this facility that has served me well for some 15 plus years, I didn't feel was listening, nor were they being as responsive to me.
Okay.
And so I took my care into my own hands. I was on the West Coast attending a conference when I got a text talking about the procedure of the biopsy that I was going to have the next day, but they indicated the wrong breast. So that felt very much like, oh, this is where you cut the wrong leg off in the operating room.
Right.
Not cool. So I landed on a red eye, went directly to the facility, asked for my records, and hand walked them into Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
And then that's when the ball started rolling. And in that moment, I had already started doing some things right for my body and decreasing my sugar intake.
Cutting out
We were cutting out the lattes from Starbucks. The daily venti latte that I did not put 5 pumps of syrup in, because that would just be too overboard.
Right.
I only did 4, but every day.
Okay.
Without stop.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And my body was rejecting it. And that's why I say we have to be kind, because ankles swelling. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, fingers a little puffy. We had come out of the pandemic, gaining a little weight, gaining a little weight, gaining a little weight. And the body was telling me, hello, hi, something's going on here.
I'm changing.
Yeah, I'm changing.
So different.
Hair is coming out a bit. What's going on? I don't understand. So that's us just ignoring.
Your body talks.
Ignoring the warning signs of something not right. So I would never forget sitting in that office that day and having gotten the diagnosis and me telling the doctor about my lifestyle change and trying to eat clean and be intentional about my sugar intake. And she said, that's great. You're already ahead of the game because sugar fuels cancer. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. So 35 pounds later, a year later, my diagnosis was October 28th of 2024. And you know it well because it was last year at Self-Care Weekend that I had the opportunity, honor of being featured in a magazine. And it was going to press. And so I called the editor and told her about my diagnosis, and the decision was made to put that part of my journey in the last lines of the magazine. And so I gave you a copy and I said, what?
You said, don't read this until
the weekend is over.
The weekend is over. I'll be back in Jacksonville. And typically I would ignore you. But it was a very busy weekend.
Yes,
and
it was a beautiful weekend.
It was a beautiful weekend.
And I was a woman of impact.
You were a woman of impact.
So we had a lot going on.
We had a lot going on.
That's right. It was a good weekend.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. And they always are. So I remember, because I always try to have a day of decompression after all the activity. And so I was sitting in the hotel room by myself, just lay back, relax, and was like, so let's see what Pat is talking about. And I'm thinking you're making some kind of announcement of something new you're about to embark on. And you shared in that magazine your diagnosis.